Good evening, I'm Sherman Moody. What I'll be talking about today is I'm going to be talking a little bit about Excel, and I'll be talking a little bit about charting and some of the tools we have available. Now, one of the first things we encounter when we talk about doing charts for most students is the fact that most students don't understand where we're getting the data from. Now, luckily in Excel.MOD, it gives some visual references that we can use to create a chart. Now, when I teach most of my students on how to do this, the first thing I want to show them is the various types of charts. Now, there are several different kinds, and each chart kind of has its own unique purpose. Things like if I have a lot of data and I'm comparing, say, multiple years, then I might think about a column chart or a bar chart. If I'm looking at a single year data and maybe I just want to do a simple comparison against 4 or 5 objects, what I might consider is a 3D pie chart or a simple pie chart. In addition, if I'm going to be doing, say, trend line analysis and I'm looking at lots of different things, what I might consider is an XY scatter chart. So we can see the different plots. Now, to do this, what I want to do is I want to do Insert on the Insert menu, and there's an option there for charts. Now, when you do that, you'll see a list there and it has, pie chart, bar chart, that sort of different charts there. So in this case, what we're going to start with is we're going to start with a simple bar chart. Now, what I want to do is from the drop-down menu, I'm going to choose Insert, Bar Chart, and I'm going to choose a simple 2D bar chart. What will happen is it'll prompt me for where am I going to get this information. Now, I will tell you ahead of time, usually it's easier if I have the table pre-selected and then choose my chart type, because it's going to make it easier to create the chart. Now, that said, if you don't, when we create a chart, what you'll have is a very generic blank chart, and that blank chart basically is going to be waiting for me to give it data. So what I'm going to do is, in Excel.07 we have smart menus. Now smart menus essentially are there to help us find the pieces we need to create the table, but be out of our way when we don't need them. So when we don't click on the table, they go away. Now, what we're going to do is I'm going to click on the table, and you're going to notice up next to where it says Microsoft Excel, you'll see something that says Chart Tools. What I want to make sure I've done is I've clicked on Chart Tools and Design. Now this is going to let me get all the information I need about my chart and start setting up my layout. Now, when I click on it, what I'm going to look at is there's a group called Data. Now if I haven't pre-selected my data, what I can do is I can actually hit the Select Data option, and it'll open up a window for me, and that window is going to allow me then to go into my chart, or go into my Excel rather, and choose the data that makes up my chart. Now, if you were able to see this, I'm actually working off a side screen here, but what I would be doing, and if you'll forgive me, I'm going to step sideways to the camera for a second, is when I open up the Select Data, it actually gives me the option to set my chart range. Now, if I were working this with students, primarily what I would do is say, okay, now here's our chart, here's our years in columns and rows, and from there we'd select a certain range and go ahead and create the bar chart. Now, in this case, since I don't have one, or I actually have students here, I'm just going to use sample data that I have that I normally use for teaching out of Element K. Now, what I'll do is now I've selected my data, and in this case, the next thing I would show them is that we can still take that existing data, and on the Design tab, what we're going to do is we're going to select the Change Chart Type. Because it's a bar chart, I know that I can flip it essentially and make it into a column chart. A lot of times people do this because they're dealing with space issues and they want to have a lot of data, but they want to keep it in a fairly small space. So I might go from column to bar, or if I have a lot of vertical data, or rather vertical space, then maybe I'll switch from bar to column. Now, once we've done that, the next thing I'm going to do is we're going to take them into and show them the chart layouts, the various types of chart layouts. Primarily the one I like to show them is the one that also includes their data with it. Mostly because that gives you a full chart with the data so that when I send this to somebody, they can open up and they can see not only the chart itself, they can also see the data that made the chart. Another thing I see from my business users is that especially new people who are new to Excel really don't understand where these numbers come from, how they're being generated, how the chart's generated. By having that data set below, it allows it to make more sense of the table and therefore make more sense of the charts. Okay? In addition to that, I also show them how we go in and we play with colors. Okay? So those are some very simple things we do on the Design tab. Next thing I do is I switch them over to the Layout tab. Now in this particular case, when I switch over to the Layout tab, one of the things I have to point out is the fact that we can do a lot of different things here. I can go in and change my chart title, I can go in and put data labels on there, I can go in and set up my axes, my grid lines. Okay? And primarily what I would do is I'd say, okay, we click on the chart, and the first thing I want to do is give it a chart title. That way it makes sense to whoever's looking at it. Usually when Excel creates a chart, it doesn't give it a very good chart title, so we want to rename it and make it a good chart title. Following that, the next thing I want to do is go over to my axes and set up my X and Y axis titles, so that way, again, people can look at the data and understand what they're reading. Okay? Once you've got that centered and you've got that where you want it and you've got the titles that make sense, then we can actually go in and mess with the chart itself so that we can change colors, we can add extra data points, we can highlight certain things in the chart, or we can even do things like going into the back of the chart to put a graphic behind it. We might even do a thing where, we change it from a 2D to a 3D. Again, just to give it some extra, kind of ability to stand out. Now, in addition to all that, again, I'm going to walk over to the side for a second, is I also show them the actual chart area drop-down in the chart elements, and it allows me to point out that not only can I use the drop-down menus, but I can also use this drop-down box and choose the element of the chart that I want to manipulate. Another thing I have to do is I have to explain what a legend is. You wouldn't think so, but actually that seems to be a fairly common thing, is that people don't understand why you would include a legend. Well, again, we go through that process. We go through having them click on the legend, having them make modifications to the legend, change colors, that sort of thing. Lastly but not least, when I get done showing them the pieces of the layout toolbar on the chart tools, I switch over to formatting. Basically, I'm going to do this for a couple of reasons. One, I want to show them the glow effect. We're going to show a glow effect on the whole thing, we'll undo it, and then what we'll do is we'll turn around and we'll select certain pieces of data and we'll do a glow effect, or we're going to do an outline effect. I periodically will have them use the drawing tools so they can put arrows and text boxes on the chart. That way they can, again, highlight specific information that would be practical for them to use. Now, in addition to all that, another thing we talk about is, how do we do a fill? How do we do, some word art? So we can really make this chart stand out. Again, the biggest reason we're using a chart is because we have a lot of people who are in a hurry and don't want to read through lots of data to understand what we've got. So instead, by using the word art, by using the chart, we're basically just encapsulating the data in a very graphical form that allows us to understand what we're seeing. At this time, I'm going to go ahead and conclude my presentation, and I hope that you guys enjoyed it. I understand it's a little short, but with this being Excel and me not having data, not being able to show you my students, I hope you understand. Thank you very much.